The map of the world is changing in ways we never predicted. Just weeks ago, the front lines seemed frozen in a brutal war of attrition, but a sudden maneuver has shattered that illusion. Ukrainian forces have crossed into the Kursk region, marking the first foreign invasion of Russian soil since World War II. This is not just a local skirmish, it is a seismic shift in global geopolitics that has left analysts stunned and the Kremlin scrambling for an answer. But as the smoke clears, a much darker question emerges. Is this a brilliant masterstroke or a desperate gamble that could lead to unprecedented escalation? The answer lies deep within the shadows of the latest, most secretive battlefield reports. For months, the narrative was one of defensive stalemates and incremental losses. However, the latest intel suggests a massive pivot toward active defense, a strategy designed to bleed the adversary while seizing the initiative. This transition involves high-stakes operations that extend far beyond the trenches of the Donbass. We are seeing a coordinated effort to bring the reality of conflict directly to the doorsteps of those who started it. By targeting logistical hubs and fuel depots deep inside enemy territory, Ukraine is attempting to paralyze the massive machine of war. But as the strategy unfolds, the world watches with bated breath, wondering if this shift will force a negotiation or trigger a far more violent response from a cornered superpower. The skies over Eastern Europe are no longer silent, as long-range precision weaponry changes the very nature of this engagement. With the green light for certain Western systems to strike targets across the border, the tactical landscape has been completely redesigned. Storm Shadows and ATACMs are now hitting command centers that were once considered untouchable. This isn't just about destroying hardware, it is about psychological dominance and disrupting the chain of command at its most critical points. Yet every strike carries a heavy diplomatic weight. Each explosion echoes in the halls of Washington and Brussels, raising the stakes of international involvement to a fever pitch. The question remains, how far can these lines be pushed before they finally... As winter approaches, a silent and cold battle is being waged over the power grid. Recent waves of missile and drone attacks have targeted the very heart of Ukraine's energy infrastructure, aiming to plunge millions into darkness and break the civilian spirit. These are not random strikes, they are calculated moves to cripple the economy and stop the wheels of industry. In response, a massive international effort is underway to provide specialized air defense and modular power units. This tug of war over electricity has become a frontline just as vital as any trench. The resilience of the population is being tested to its absolute limit as technicians work under fire to keep the lights burning against all. Enter the era of the Dragon drones. This is the latest evolution in modern warfare, where silicon and software are as lethal as lead and steel. These new unmanned aerial vehicles, equipped with thermite-like mixtures, are incinerating defensive positions with terrifying efficiency. But it is the integration of artificial intelligence that truly changes the game. Drones can now navigate electronic warfare jamming, identifying targets autonomously when signals are lost. This technological leap has turned the battlefield into a laboratory for the future of combat. While these innovations provide a critical edge, they also raise profound ethical questions about the role of machines in deciding human fate. Beneath the headlines of heroic charges lies the unglamorous, brutal reality of logistics. The flow of ammunition and equipment from the West has faced unprecedented hurdles, from political gridlock to manufacturing bottlenecks. Every day that a shipment is delayed, the pressure on the front lines intensifies exponentially. Ukraine is now racing to build its own domestic defense industry, forging partnerships with global giants to produce shells and armored vehicles on home soil. This transition from total dependency to self-reliance is the most significant long-term story of the war. If they can secure their own supply chains, the strategic calculus changes forever. However, the race against the clock is relentless, and the enemy... While headlines focus on the north, a grinding and devastating offensive continues in the east. The city of Pokrovsk has become the focal point of a massive Russian push, with forces utilizing meat wave tactics to overwhelm defensive lines. This relentless pressure aims to capture key rail hubs and cut off vital supply routes for the entire Donbass region. The cost in lives and equipment is staggering, yet the offensive persists with a grim determination. For the defenders, every inch of ground is bought with blood, forcing difficult decisions about when to hold and when to retreat. This brutal war of attrition is the ultimate test of endurance, where the winner might simply be the one who lasts a day longer. The conflict is no longer confined to two nations. It has become a global magnet for shifting alliances. Reports of North Korean personnel and Iranian ballistic missiles entering the theater have sent shockwaves through the international community. This cross-continental cooperation suggests a new axis of convenience aimed at challenging the current global order. In response, NATO is bolstering its eastern flank, and discussions about security guarantees for Ukraine are reaching a critical turning point. This is no longer just a regional dispute. It is a clash of ideologies and power structures that will define the 21st century. Every diplomatic move made in a far-off capital has a direct, often lethal consequence on the muddy fields of the actual combat zone.
Beyond the maps and the missiles are the people whose lives have been fractured by years of constant shelling. The latest news highlights a community that refuses to break, where underground schools and hidden hospitals have become the new normal. Displacement remains a massive crisis, with millions still unable to return to their homes in the east. Yet there is a profound sense of national unity that seems to grow stronger with every siren. This psychological resilience is the invisible fortress that sustains the war effort. But as the conflict drags on, the long-term mental and social costs are beginning to surface, creating a legacy of trauma that will take generations to...
War is an expensive endeavor, and both economies are now being warped by the demands of the front. Russia has pivoted to a total war economy, funneling a massive percentage of its GDP into the military-industrial complex while masking inflation through state spending. Conversely, Ukraine's economy is kept afloat by a delicate mix of international aid and resilient domestic exports. The battle of the central banks is just as fierce as the battle for the trenches. Sanctions are slowly tightening their grip, but the global shadow market for oil continues to provide a lifeline for the Kremlin. This financial endurance race will ultimately determine how long the machines of war can continue to roar. The first side to go bankrupt loses everything. As the stalemate persists, the whispers of diplomacy are growing louder in the corridors of power. President Zelensky's victory plan has been presented to world leaders, outlining a path toward a just and lasting peace. However, the terms for any potential ceasefire remain miles apart, with neither side willing to concede territory or sovereignty. The world is reaching a crossroads where the choice between continued escalation and a fragile truce must be made. There is a growing fear that a frozen conflict could simply be a prelude to an even larger war in the future. The tension between the desire for peace and the necessity of justice is creating a diplomatic deadlock that seems impossible to break. We stand at a precipice where the next few months will likely dictate the course of history for decades. The war in Ukraine has evolved from a local defense into a global struggle for the future of international law and territorial integrity. As new technologies emerge and alliances shift, the uncertainty only deepens. Will the spring bring a decisive breakthrough, or will we see another year of grinding attrition? One thing is certain, the world you knew before this conflict is gone, and what emerges next is still being written in the smoke of the battlefield. Stay vigilant and stay informed, for the resolution of this story will affect us all. The final chapter is still waiting to be authored by the brave.